Right. My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with David and Angela Anderson. It's July 8th, 2024, and we're at Syndicate Wine Bar in Beaverton. David and Angela, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
First question to get things started, and either of you can start, is why wine?
Why not? I warned you. Wine is something that's very elusive for a lot of people. Looking at it from a technical standpoint, it finds itself at a nexus of the arts and sciences, geopolitics. I mean, wars have been fought over grapes. History is written around it. Trade routes established. It's anybody that is interested in the world or learning about the world inevitably crosses paths with wine. My path, just speaking for myself, was a little different. I was a Linfield student, and I got a summer job at Linfield. And as part of the summer job, I worked groundskeeping in the kitchen, and they tasked me to work IPNC. And so I was the guy that dug out the salmon pit, threw my back out. It was the first time I learned I had sciatica. And I was the one that cleaned it up afterwards. I worked the kitchens. I helped recycle 3,000 bottles of wine. They put me into catering. And then I found myself working more and more gigs at the community center in McMinnville, working under Rusty Brown, who is still a very dear friend of ours. I didn't know he was a long-distant relative at the time either. So, it's Yamhill County, everyone's related, right? We're not going to strike that. And you have been warned. But the whole thing, it came out of like all these little nooks and crannies, but you have to understand, I grew up in a dry home. My dad was a minister, my mom was from New Hampshire. There was not a drop of alcohol in the house, well, at least that they knew of. When the brothers came home on holidays, we'd go for a walk. And that meant down to 3rd Street, and Mom knew exactly what that meant. And one day she said, I know what that means. You're going to go consume alcohol. And we all said, yes, Mom, we are. But it was interesting because it was something I could never have. But I learned about it as a student, again, at Linfield, when I traveled to Europe for half a year. There's details I don't have to go into there, but I found myself with a big backpack, which made me stick out like a sore thumb in the streets of Paris. I told people, I thought about having a Canadian flag on my backpack, but they were cool with me being American. But I thought I was being really cool by having a bottle of wine that fit in the drink holder on my backpack. I didn't know it was that at the time that white wine should be chilled. I thought it looked cool. I traveled. I had a Eurail pass. I went through Dijon. I went down to Lyon. I went to the south of France. I was in Avignon. I was in the forefront of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Had no idea what it was all about, but the stories that they were telling, that intrigued me. So from a very early age, like drinking age, because we only drink responsibly, I knew it was something that was going to be a part of my life. And I wanted to understand it for the right reasons and for my own reasons. So as soon as I got out of college, I had a few freelance gigs. I was an art major at Linfield, and I picked up graphic design. I did some freelance work for some wineries, and they invited me to some of their events, and I realized I was the youngest person there. Some people were like 4 times my age, and I thought that was a big deal then. Now it's like, they're not much older than me right now. So, but I realized then that it was a passion that connected with people at all levels, all walks of life, all backgrounds, and I didn't want it to be something elusive. I didn't want it to be something scary, and so I started doing my own research and learning about it. Going out on weekends with college alum, doing tastings out at different wineries, and then through my work as then a web designer, one day I stumbled upon the domain OregonWines.com that happened to be on back order, meaning someone had let it expire. So for the whopping total of $75, I was able to land this really good domain. And I used it as a place to start building websites, talking about the wineries, learning about things called tasting notes, a diary of your information on your experiences with the wine. And I realized that this was my passion. And that was in 2002. It wouldn't be for another, 17 years before I would officially open an establishment in the industry. So that's just a quick little summary of how I got here.
How about you, Angela?
Came at it from a completely different standpoint. I was a business major, communications major at Western Oregon, and then I got my MBA. And seeing how passionate he is on wine, I'm like, let's figure out a way to make a business out of it. And then we turned it into, hey, how do we make it something that has so many different ways to get involved besides just drinking a glass of wine? What can it be? Let's just take our imagination, take our creativity anywhere we want it to go. But I started working fine dining at Augustine's on Highway 18 back in the 90s. Yep.
We're gonna meet Jeff on Thursday. We're gonna interview Jeff on Thursday.
I love Jeff.
Amazing.
So yes, I started there, and then I went off to college, and then I got my graduate degree in business. I love running a business. I love taking care of my people, taking care of sustainability, looking at building teams, cultivating the skills of the people on the team so we give the best experience possible. And again, I started that experience in working at Augustine's back in the early 90s, dating myself here a little bit. But we actually met in high school in McMinnville.
Technically,
Nope.
we met at band camp. I play trumpet.
Yeah.
And
Clarinet.
clarinet. That's adorable.
Yeah.
There were no flutes involved.
No, we did. We met at camp. We were 14 years old. We met at camp. Graduated from McMinnville High School together. He went to Linfield. I went to Western. Kind of lived our own lives, and then got together 12 years ago.
Met up in divorce class. Something Washington County does if you're a parent. They make you go through class to understand what's before you. So we reconnected and realized there was something there that we hadn't realized before.
Because we've been friends the whole time.
Yeah.
So we've been friends for 35 years.
Through the tech company that I ran for 20 years, I had a lot of winery clients.
Yes.
I would build their websites. I would help them with email migrations. I loved driving out into wine country through the hills. There was one night that I was at J. Christopher. Absolutely loved their story, loved their wines, and they literally left me with the keys to the gate. And because I was working on gajillions of gigabytes of data transfer, and they said, just lock up on your way out. I said, okay, I will. And at the time, I was also doing some distance running. So there it was in the late December, months. It was starting to snow outside, and it was just sunset, and it was magical. And I realized then, I really wanted to get more engaged in the industry. And it was through various consulting clients we had that we started doing. She would do the high-level HR management, C-level consulting,
finance. Just a lot of it had to do with team building and understanding the skills of the people in your team. But we were doing consulting for wineries, and we were also leading networking groups for sustaining small businesses. So with Green Drinks is what it's called. We were doing a Green Drinks event once a month throughout Portland and bringing in speakers from the wine industry to talk about their story and what makes their unique small business. And then we'd bring in wine, and then what happened is we started getting a lot of pressure from the city of Beaverton. Because you guys are already doing this, what would you think about opening a wine bar? Beaverton wants a wine bar really bad. Then you could have a business lounge during the day and then run a wine bar at night. So that was the original vision for this.
The other half of it is that exactly coincided with one of the winery clients asking us,
Yes.
hey, we've been thinking about opening a tasting room in Beaverton, like Old Town, which is where we're at right now. And the thought was, if they opened the tasting room, would we staff it? And overnight we talked about it and thought, no, but we could open our own place and carry their labels. And then through the additional consulting we did that summer, it wasn't just us. We had a photographer, a drone videographer, there was a business consultant, another team person, and then we would go home at night, and everybody knew it meant there's a fire pit involved. Someone brings some wine, someone brings some meat or veg.
Potluck happening.
Potluck. And
in my backyard.
And it got to be the original charcuterie boards that we now have were kind of trialed there. And there was one night when I had an Avengers Assemble moment, and instead I just happened to text everybody, Syndicate, unite. And they showed
and then
up.
that was the call for a potluck in our backyard. Because we had a business problem we needed to fix together, and if you bring a lot of business owners together, you can talk about a struggle that a business is having in a confidential way and say, okay, so this business is struggling with this, what's your point of view, what's your point of view, what's your point of view? And we would sit there and, solve the matters of the business world. I don't know, try to aim for world peace at the same time while drinking wine, and it all came from Syndicate Unite.
And the term syndicate was one that we'd puzzled over about a half dozen possible names, but what a syndicate is, it's simply a group of people united for a common cause. And in the guise of what we're doing, it's a celebration of good wine. Great wine. Excellent wine. And to this day, the name keeps evolving. I mentioned when you got here, we had just finished up a very busy weekend, a very successful club weekend. We understood that to be a long-lasting brand or a wine bar with a physical point of presence in Beaverton, historically, almost all of our predecessors lasted 1 year and closed. We opened officially in July 2019. We grew through the pandemic. We expanded. Where we're sitting now was a former music store. The owner moved a few blocks down the street. So in the middle of the pandemic, we expanded from 900 to 2,300 square feet, built out a food program, increased the bottle shop, which was where we used to seat everybody.
And had a full dining room outside.
And we had, an outdoor dining space. We would turn away 40 to 50 people a night.
It's crazy.
It was its own thing, yeah. We're now at a point of balance, in the sense that we typically have days off. We're okay with not having a fully booked out room. The business is diversified through not only in dine-in, bottle shop to go, but the wine club. That's about a third of everything. And the club members that are most supportive, they get protective and proud of the tables. So if you ever hear us mention table 12, and I can tell you that those
the rowdiest people in our club.
the club members that are listening to this interview are going to stand up and cheer and do a little dance and say, table 12.
We made it.
Yeah, so that's now part of the story. They want their own shirts that say table 12.
It's a community within a community.
One thing to note about my shirt, it doesn't say Syndicate Wine Bar, it says Syndicate Wines. Before we had a physical bar, we were working on our private label. And we now have a syndicate of winemakers that we work with to produce about a half dozen private labels for us each year. So those are the bottles flanking us. We have a non-vintage sparkling, a Sauvignon Blanc, and a Pinot Blanc. We have two different Pinot Noirs, one being a Ribbon Ridge. We have a Red Mountain Blend, and we have a Rocks District Syrah. So I'm not sure of how many wine bars have their own private labels. No, we're not a winery, but we like to help tell the story of the wine industry and putting our name on wines that we'll stand behind because of their quality and their story is part of that.
I love that. We're going to come back and talk about the shop a little bit more. We'll back up for a moment, and we'll talk about Linfield for a second. Tell me about your time at Linfield outside of IPNC.
When I went to, okay, so set the Wayback Machine. You're familiar with Anderson Hall. It's named after my grandfather, Elam Anderson Sr., who was a president of Linfield in the 1930s. He had just returned from travels for about 7 or 8 years with his wife, Kalina Anderson, Dean of Students in the 1960s. She was also an English teacher at Linfield, professor. They helped start the Shanghai School of English, something like that. And so my father was actually born in Shanghai, grew up speaking Chinese as a young boy, and then if you'd ever seen the movie Empire of the Sun about the Japanese invasion of China, the murmurings were there, and so in the mid-1930s, my grandparents got out. They were part of that exodus. They brought back a wealth of Chinese influence, steamer trunks, literally from these ships. They landed in this tiny little town called McMinnville, and this was at the very dawn of the underpinnings of McCarthyism. And so immediately my grandfather was not popular because he was inviting Chinese dignitaries to McMinnville at a time when were there any Chinese citizens or people at all allowed in the state. There was a lot of bigotry at the time, but he cut paths through and he rose above it all. And so the legacy there was preserved. There's actually a book on him. What I didn't want was what happened when we moved into my grandmother's old house in 1990 from the South Valley, Willamette Valley. Everybody knew me as Kalina's grandson. And much to the chagrin of various people I was dating, etc., they didn't like that either. They wanted me to be known for me. They didn't like to be the tag along. So when I got into Linfield, the last thing I wanted was to be lauded for that. And thankfully at the time, being a legacy student got you a black and white photograph in the yearbook. And I was fine with that. I was absolutely fine with that. But I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I knew I was really into art. I had a passive interest in music, being a musical performer, instrumental with trumpet. My first advisor, Dick Barassa, got me into all the things that a music major should do. It's like, you got to sign up for calculus. I'm like, what does calculus have to? He said, it's good for music. So I took calculus. I got into the sciences, and then finally, Ron pulled me aside and said, what are you doing? You're never going to graduate with an art degree. So I had a reset halfway through my freshman year. I was interested in everything, and that was a challenge. I got into international communications. I actually have a minor in that. As it would turn out, I was one credit short of my music minor. I kept falling asleep to the music and just couldn't bring myself to finish the class that Connie Waltz, the late Connie Waltz, was teaching. So I accepted not getting my music minor. But it was a struggle because I wanted to learn everything. A young lady I was then dating would go on to study languages. So she was gone for a year and a half to various, she studied in France, she studied in Costa Rica. And so that coincided with an opportunity for me to travel to England. And so I found myself in Canterbury and Nottingham my junior year. And that also came with an art history focus in that travel. So I was in Paris for a week. It was really a life-changing experience. It's hard to pin down exactly what I got most out of at Linfield. If I were to go back and do it again, I would approach it completely differently. But then I wouldn't be who I am today, right? So what I did do is I took that, what I did gain, and that desire for learning is what I now apply to my current job, which is constantly about learning new wines, the winemakers, learning parts of the world, new varietals, new winemaking methods, the history. My son even gave me a book on Burgundy for Christmas. And wow, even the things in that book are now catapulting into other regions I'm learning about. And it's a lifelong thing. So Linfield taught me how to learn. That's probably what I got most out of it. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity that the now university, then college, provided me. So.
Angela, tell us about your time in college. Did you go in with an idea of what you were going to do?
So I am a product of a teacher family, all teachers within McMinnville. And so I went to Western Oregon thinking I was going to be an elementary education teacher. Switched my major my junior year to communications because I just found a fascination with reading every page in every book about leadership development, corporate communications, argumentation, persuasion. I loved the curriculum. And I ended up finishing my communications degree at Western. I got involved in as many leadership activities on campus at Western that you could come up with, including being a resident assistant and hall government and traveling up and down the West Coast, speaking on different classes in leadership, all the way from conferences at Western Washington University all the way down to San Diego State University. So I was very, very fortunate my sophomore and junior year to be a part of a great organization which gave me a lot of experience in public speaking and leading classes and leading groups and teams. And then I got my I got my MBA in 2010 with a concentration in organizational development. I just have this fascination with building teams, right now it's building programs and having teams work together on different projects. The part of the business that I run, he's our SOM, but I run the business part of it, the finance, the strategy, the big contracts, or let's work with the chamber, let's work with the city, how does this all work together? What do we need? What is the definition of advocate? I get really involved in the small business sustainability when it comes to I don't want my fellow neighbor to be closed. What can we do to collaborate so all of us together stay involved? But it's building a community around here, and that's what's really, really important to us. The wine club has become a community within a community. People coming here at the bar and saying, I've had a hard day at work and I'm just going to sit here with this glass. And then they start talking about, I have a hard time making friends. And when adults start sharing their humble sides where they say, I have a hard time making friends, I'm like, well, I could be your friend. And then we just start talking and we start getting to know these people, and then it becomes a community within the community. And with that commonality of wine, I love looking around this restaurant at night and people are enjoying their people and they're not on their phones. And that to me is a win, because you really are enjoying who you're with at that time and you're present. I just feel like that part of the business is what I love. It's we have created a place where people want to escape and just be a person, and they're not held back by the pressures of life. They can come in here and just escape it. When we started this and we started thinking about this in 2018, since we graduated high school together, Cheers was really popular back then. We came up with the idea of we wanted to have a wine version of Cheers. And we have created that. People walk through the door and it'd be a regular or club member and it's hey, and it gets real loud all of a sudden, but it's fine. And there's people that have their favorite bar stools and they have their favorite tables and they've got their own table names, but it's watching that community develop organically and then coming around at it a couple years later when they've come in here not thinking that they can make friends to now they're having barbecues with each other and they're becoming friends and they're going to Renaissance fairs together and they're saying to us, hey, if you create a second chance prom, I will come in the light blue powdered suit with the ruffles and make it just all right, we're gonna plan a second chance prom. And now we have a group of individuals who...
We have kilt night.
We have kilt night. We have...
How to get kilts.
Halloween parties where a group of 10 to 12 all dress in the same theme, and then another person picks. We plan the parties, and people just show up, and they've got a thread with a lot of them, and invite each other over, and it is a really beautiful family. And I had the best story I think I've ever heard, and it actually brought me to tears. We've got a few from this one, but there's a club member. She's in her 70s. And I didn't realize the day that she came in here for the first time that she was struggling. She was in here with her daughter-in-law. And we just started talking about wine and what her favorite wine was. She ended up buying us out that night of that wine, signing up for club that night, and then telling me my son had just died a week ago. And I was having a hard time leaving the house. And now, a year later, she says that her car just automatically drives her here when she's feeling lonely. And it's beautiful, and I love that. And it just warms my heart to know that if people are feeling low, they just come down here and they've got their friends and they get built back up and they feel that love and acceptance of, I don't have to be in my house feeling lonely or sad. I can come down here and I've got just a group of people that'll lift me up. To me, that's just this reward we never thought. Of course, you create a really extensive business plan that we did, and that's not in there. That's the added bonus of watching this.
It's something that can't be quantified.
No.
It's the qualitative experience that people come here and they fill the space with that energy.
And it's so beautiful. Our first year, we met a couple that would come in here for date nights. Their sons were in middle school. It was her favorite place to go for date night. So they would come in here, they had their anniversary here. And I think 3 days later, she died of a heart attack. And so now he's a single dad raising 2 teenage boys. And he just has loved and loved coming in here. And we found out that his wife died, and she has a plaque on our back wall.
Yeah, it's out of the range of the camera, but that is a sponsorship wall that
Stories.
in the middle of the pandemic we opened up. If you want to become a part of our story, we'll give you a permanent place
On the
in
wall.
our shop. And what we didn't expect was how many of them would become memorials for a lost loved one or pet, or celebrating an anniversary or a special date.
Our business community that we all work together to lift each other up.
I created one just a couple months back when I learned that the very first person that welcomed us to this district, he used to have a shop across the street, he randomly passed a couple years ago, so I put one on the wall for him. Mm-hmm. But it's a reminder that it takes a community to build a community wine bar.
Yeah, so that wall is
It's a special place.
community wine bar built by the community is the tagline for that back wall. And you can just explore the wall, and we probably have a good 12 more plaques that need to go up there that we haven't done yet. But it's a beautiful representation of, it's not just us. It's our whole team, it's our whole community, it's the wine club, it's the regulars, it's people that are brand new to this community because they just moved for work or whatever, come in and they're like, I needed to find a place. And I'm like, well, we can be that place. I don't know what that place means to you, but what it can mean to anybody, but you know what? Even if you're sitting here with a laptop, that's still good. If you're sitting here working the business lounge during the day, I don't know. It's still just beautiful.
Amazing what you can do. When you say we don't expect it.
No.
You don't know what's going to come.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about careers before wine, before we get back to this place. I have lots of questions about Syndicate, but tell me a little bit. Dave, we'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about...
As an art major, there was a very serious challenge. How do you get paid to make art? Why would you go to a place like Linfield and get an expensive degree in art? That's what I knew. And so I originally got an internship in the Office of College Relations, studied under Candido Salinas, who I don't know if he's still there or not.
There?
Yeah, well, Candido taught me so much about graphic design. He would take me on pre-press runs up to Portland, Northwest Flanders, when it was Printers Row. We'd go get a meal afterwards, and I just got to understand it from the industry side, and to do the press checks, to see the big printing machines. I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I had older brothers that did desktop publishing, and they were in advertising. And so I thought, well, here's an opportunity for me to follow suit. So out of college, I got a job at the local town paper. I will choose not to name it for the purpose of this interview. But a few months later, I got recruited away to the Salem Statesman Journal. They needed a webmaster. And what I had done in my time since graduation was really focus on web design. And so the very first Linfield website was done using Adobe PageMill. And when that would break the code because its WYSIWYG editor was, I had to learn HTML on the fly. And so I started stacking that up with different scripting languages. And then I found myself working a corporate job for Gannett, sent me across the country to Norfolk, Virginia to learn their whole web system and everything for real estate. And I came back with my head full of all this data that I didn't know what to make sense of. And so I taught myself web programming because there were no classes at the time. And still to this day, if you go to the Beaverton School District and look at their curriculum, they will teach you HTML, JavaScript, and C++. They don't teach you PHP. They don't teach you really. It's really interesting. Like still, that's an elusive skill. Where do you go to school to learn web design or web programming? So I realized that I could actually earn a living as an artist. What a concept of making websites. And then I got recruited away to come up here to Beaverton to some web design company. And they needed someone that understood both artists and programmers, and they thought that I would be that bridge. Interesting challenge. I didn't know what PHP was when I arrived, but I learned it rapidly and realized, oh wow. And just everything you could do, the interplay between data and user interface. I love organizing data. So I really got into database modeling. So how do you organize things and slice it and dice it? Nowadays we have things called hashtags. Back then it was relational database with primary keys and secondary keys. You had it was the whole language of it that I just fell in love with. So I followed that path for a bit, and believe it or not, where I worked for them is just 5 blocks north of here.
Yeah.
It was 1999. I was living in West Salem, so I started doing the hour and 10-minute commute each way every day, but for a 70% raise, not bad. Moved up here a few months into that and have basically been a Beaverton resident since then. That company came and went. I continued on. I had a brief stint consulting with the web division of that same newspaper in McMinnville we won't talk about, and realized it was time for me to go freelance as soon as I'd landed OregonWines.com. So I started building that up as a side gig to teach myself more database relationships and all the stuff that goes with building a website, e-commerce, email marketing. At the time, the wine industry was still quite technologically limited. You walk in and you realize these are farmers. They know the land. They know how to work the vines, but do they know how to do anything online? That's not their specialty. And where do they go? How do they promote their brands? So that became a concept for that website to kind of showpiece different profiles for each winery. Also, I would learn about more of the wines, learn about the varietals. The Ultimate database had 78 tables, all cross-referenced. We're talking varietals, we're talking the appellations in Oregon, we're talking, you name it, the styles of wine. And then we built in a database for food pairing with recipes. At that point, I realized the thing had gotten out of control. I tried to bring it back over the years while I was building a web design consulting agency. I tried to build it just into a side project, a place that I could focus my knowledge. And this all predates WordPress. So about the time that WordPress came along, the homegrown blogging system I built became kind of arcane. So I converted the entire platform into WordPress using a touring theme built by a company in the Ukraine. And believe it or not, it's perfect for building a touring system. Unbeknownst to me, someone at the Oregon Wine Growers Association was trying to figure out who is this OregonWines.com person? And we happened to just cross paths by email, and there was this, "It's you" moment. And I said, "Look, this is just me. I'm not trying to compete against you guys. I'm just doing my thing, just having fun." I ran a web hosting company. It's basically like a local version of GoDaddy, except we didn't do the bad things that GoDaddy's owner did, which we won't also not talk about in the scope of this interview. We ran a local, sustainable alternative. Elephant safe web hosting, by the way. You can Google that someday. Yeah. Anyway, big, long thing. I started it in 2002. I sold it in June of 2020, right at the peak of the start of the pandemic, and on almost the very day that we at Syndicate were told to close our doors to outside customers. We could not seat anybody. It was really a challenge. But that tech company ultimately led me into the path of the industry because of all the interactions with wineries and those in the association. I will say this, Dick Adelsheim was right. In 2008, there was this article that came out, published in the Willamette Week, called Grapes of Erath, because Erath had sold to, Saint Michel, which, has now changed hands a couple times with new ownership. I was concerned at the time because we were losing a craft, a small brand. I mean, in the scope of global brands, Erath at the time, the production still put them in the craft artisan. I had a concern of outside dollars coming into Oregon and it becoming just a Californian, Napa Valley all over again. David Adelsheim. And he's like, I don't think Anderson's right on this. Well, he was correct in the sense that interest brings business, but nowadays, I would say, well, I still had a valid point. You go down to wine country, you're dropping $50 to $75 for a flight, and we haven't raised our prices here except $1 in 5 years. My concern was you bring in all the big dollars, people have to start paying out. And so, yes, there's now 1,200 wineries in Oregon. They're beautiful, but can you afford to go to them? So that's something we try to do here at Syndicate, is make it accessible to people of all walks of life, all demographics, all economic levels. And I think that is something that the industry has to figure out for itself if it wishes to stay relevant, especially with the newest generation. People want experiences. They don't want to drop hundreds or thousands of dollars on a case of wine. They want memories. So that's where we're at a point of transition also in terms of all the programming we do. Less on products, more on memories. But yeah, the tech company got me into it. It gave me a pathway to feel my passion and learn the technical angles on it.
Angela, same question. Tell me about your career before this.
I think I went through a lot of offices where I was an office manager, so managing front teams. I worked as an office manager for a cosmetic surgeon. I worked as an office manager for a tech company down in San Diego. And I think when I moved back here, lived in San Diego for 7 years, and when I moved back here, it was because my dad was very, very ill. And he was a prominent member of the McMinnville community, so I've been like, I need to move back just to be with my dad. And my mom appreciated us being close. But I got into escrow. So I was an escrow officer working in finance and closing loans and real estate and all over Oregon. Got my own desk as an escrow officer, and then went into escrow management, managing teams of escrow officers, training, leading classes. I ended up coming over to Canvas Host in 2017, I think it was, because it was time for me to leave escrow because it's a daunting career. It's basically 80 hours a week. And at the time I had young children I was in that field for over 10 years, and I'm like, I think it's time for me to walk away. And so I came over to Canvas Host and did all of the bookkeeping. I learned web design. And started working on some websites for some restaurants around here that actually still here. And I started working on some big project negotiations for contracts that we were working on over at Canvas Host. And then it turned into, hey, we're on site talking about this contract. But then they started, CEOs of wineries and restaurants started asking us different questions. They're like, oh, you have a background in finance, or you have a background in HR. Can we get your assistance in this? And so we built an arm to Canvas Host, which was consulting. And I would come in for a short amount of time to a company and try to clean up their books, or let's talk about what's going on. Is it something that you feel like you don't have the right people in the right positions? Do you feel like you need to have some more flexibility? Is it that you want to back out of being so on the hands-on with the company? We went through a lot of different situations with some of these owners. And then we would be running green drinks at night. So basically I went from escrow and finance to running with David, Canvas Host, and then running this. But we knew that if we were going to open a wine bar, we needed to study all the wine bars up and down the coast, because it's market research, right? So we knew that in Beaverton there was a high failure rate for wine bars. So the two of us, being very astute and like to read and learn about everything, we just started visiting every single wine bar up and down the coast. If we went to a new town, we'd find their wine bar, just almost secret shop them, because we were working in our minds of how can we beat the Beaverton trend? How can we make it something that, first of all, if we're going to commit this much energy, it lasts longer than a year. If we're going to commit our dollars, how do we make it so it lasts longer than a year? And so we figured out that, and we went to a lot of wine bars in McMinnville too. We figured out for us what would work for us, especially in Beaverton, is creating partnerships with the wineries that are local to us. And and sending people out to them, which they have varietals that are specific for Oregon. But for us, have something that's not. So you can have the best of both worlds. You can collaborate with the local wineries and restaurants, and you can be something different. So it ends up being that like multiple stops in one day. So you benefit 2 different businesses at one time. So we worked more on our partnerships, our collaborations. We have wine club members that will actually come to us and saying, hey, I have family in town. Where would you recommend that we go? Of course, we're going to stop at Syndicate first for brunch, and then we're going to go out into wine country. Which places should you go to? And David has a very scientific approach and the love of wine, and I have the love of people. I mean, you love people too. But I remember the people and the faces behind the names, and like I will say, hey, I want you to go to this winery and talk to this person. That's why it means so much to me, is because of this person and their story and who they are and their service level. And so we have our favorites. We do have our favorites, and we send people around, or we'll just go around. We still do market research.
This
is an ever evolving industry that you have to be a student. And our attitude too in running our business too is we don't want it to stagnate. So we'll constantly be changing the menu, we'll be changing the activities, we'll be changing the music. Music creates a vibe here. We don't want to have the same menu all the time, no matter if it's food or if it's wine, because give that variety. The whole business is built on variety. And I think that like bringing my finance part of it, my HR part of it in, my organization part of it in, it kind of creates this yin and yang with David and I, where he's our somm and he helps the kitchen team and the front of house team create the menus. And then it comes to me to put it on paper and design it. Or they come up with an idea for a program and we just start executing on this program. So the team does think of it as the yin and yang. They're like, oh, that's a David thing, or oh, that's an Ange thing. Schedules are me, and
wine lists are me.
Wine list is you. Selecting the wine for the library is all David. Like
I think I have the better job.
I have to be the tough love person, or there was a couple of times yesterday that he was leading a tasting of 55 people, and he looks at me and he's like, Ange, and I'm like, oh, it's an issue that I have to put the management hat on, and then he can keep teaching, and I go put the management hat on and kick somebody out of an ADA spot that doesn't have an ADA pass. That's typical for me, being the good cop, bad cop type of thing. David, you keep teaching and having fun. I'll go knock some sense around to people.
We take turns over who's the good cop versus the bad cop, but yeah.
But yeah, the team has recognized this. I'm starting to get more involved in the chamber. I'm starting to get more involved in the things that are affecting this block, because there's about 3 city initiatives at City Council right now that affect this block specifically and affect small businesses in my community. And there is some level of gentrification that's happening around here as as our leases are coming due. The lease rate, square footage, price per square footage is jumping once the leases have expired, which makes it unaffordable for us small businesses to stay. And so it ends up recruiting in more large and medium-sized businesses, and small businesses are what created the culture down here. So it happens in a lot of different neighborhoods, but we're trying to fight it just right here. And so I tend to do some of the big picture things that are outside the walls here, and David will do a lot of the service things that are here. So I'm like, I'm heading to a meeting. He's like, okay, let me know how it goes. Or we'll both, sometimes David will speak at City Council because it's a topic that gets really passionate for both of us. And he'll be like, I'm gonna testify today. And it happens a lot.
One of the biggest angles of community or business advocacy is when you're in the council chambers and you realize the chamber's mostly empty. The public doesn't bother to show up. Yeah. They don't realize you have to show up to have your voice registered.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm just showing up and saying thanks to a certain council member for voicing their support of something. I'm like, okay, I'm done. And other times there's an issue of concern. Hey, this is affecting my district. Do you know that we lost 3 businesses because of this? What are you going to say or do about this? I just want to raise this to your attention. This is a concern, whether or not you're aware of it or whether or not you're hearing about it. And it's not always a popular thing to do, to say the truth that is inconvenient for those with political aspirations, but they do answer to us as community members and citizens, and we as citizens have a responsibility to get out there and say, yes, I am an owner of Syndicate Wine Bar,
Yes.
and this is an issue of concern to me.
Yes.
So there's a lot more that we do here these days, post-pandemic, than running the bar. So it's definitely, it's a continual evolution of the brand, the business, and our engagement in the community.
I think our biggest thing is that we end up standing up for fairness. And that kind of goes back to his grandparents and my family too, because we were raised very much the same. And we met so young too. It's like, no, I know his family. He knows my family. But one thing that gets us fired up very fast is fighting for fairness. Fairness, all levels of it. Right now, my biggest issue is fighting for the mobility challenged. And I, at one point, wasn't walking very well. I was on an e-scooter. I had surgeries on my feet, so I know these sidewalks forward and backwards and how hard it is to navigate in crutches or a scooter. And I was only temporarily disabled, but I think about those in the wheelchairs going, how are they going to cross these streets? How are they going to navigate when there's construction? How are they going to navigate when there's no signal light to slow down traffic? And we start thinking about it from a different point of view of our mobility challenged. And so I'm starting to get more in an advocacy role for mobility challenged. And it feels good because there's a lot of mobility challenged that are like, thank you for giving it a voice. Thank you for hearing me. I can't believe how many mobility challenged people come in here and say, I feel heard and I feel seen. And I'm like, tell me what you think. I mean, I've navigated them too, but tell me how it's experienced for you. And one of the things that I'm pushing crazy is there's maybe 2 or 3 ADA parking spots in this 5-block radius. That's not enough. And a lot of our mobility challenged want to get out. They want to be around people. And it's really hard because these streets are so fast to be mobility challenged right here. And so we're at City Council a lot trying to fight for fairness.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I like that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm curious about sort of the last question before I talk about the shop here, and go back to you. Building teams. You said that's been a passion of yours, and a consistent. Tell me, in a nutshell, give me your philosophy, your building teams philosophy and strategy.
I think my philosophy comes from we're all unique individuals, and I think when it comes to building teams, if you describe it or kind of articulate it into a puzzle. Puzzle pieces are shaped in different ways. They're fit together in different ways. If you have everybody that is the same, your puzzle pieces are the same, and it's not a cohesive. And so I look at building teams as I want different individuals with different backgrounds, because the team gets richer and it can achieve more if you have not the same personality and the same experience level and the same skills and traits, but you have a variety of differences and a different thought process too. So with us, with our team here, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different histories. But when we start talking about like, okay, so this concept that we're doing right now, and we've been doing it for 6 months, it's really not working. How about we change it? And then we start brainstorming the different ideas, and those different perspectives come through because you can see it from different levels of wisdom. And my philosophy is more people with different points of view create a richer experience. And so that's how we've created the team here. And that's what I love about building teams too, is understanding how exponentially different an experience can be with more people at the table from different backgrounds. That's my passion.
It really is.
He's like, yep, that's true.
So you mentioned that the idea for this, or the kind of the genesis for this was you had the syndicate meetings and you had this. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, why those meetings. I mean, there's a lot of small businesses. There's a lot of places in the world. There's not a lot of meetings like that I'm aware of. So tell me how those meetings started happening and how that kind of drove toward this.
Not naming any names, of course, because of confidentiality. The Oregon wine industry is constantly going through upheaval.
Yeah.
Okay, if you look at trends We're currently in a year where the numbers don't match any previous trends. DTC spending by consumers is overall, is it down or is it up or is it plateaued? But spending per person has gone up. Is that a result of tasting room fees increasing? Consumers are now more experiential driven. So now you see all the wineries having bingo night and trivia night and live music night, whereas in the pandemic it was, come on out, don't bring your own food. We have pizza and sandwiches on site on weekends. The industry is having to reinvent itself constantly in almost a seasonal level. Those challenges didn't exist in 2018, 2019 when we were still actively consulting. Back then it was, I need help training my team. I don't know how to train my team. I've got a team that is very dysfunctional. I've got a team that these people get along, but those people don't. I don't even know how to read my books. I don't know if I'm in debt or I'm profitable. I don't know where to cut costs. Here's my books. Here's my balance sheet. Figure it out.
Here's all my bank statements. I haven't balanced my account.
Sometimes you're looking through it and you're like, what is that?
Yeah.
Does that look right to you? And you're like, no, that does not. Okay, we circle that. Okay, who's an expert on this? Okay, let's bring him in. And it was things like that. We're good at some things, but we recognize what we're not good at. And the power of a team is getting those puzzle pieces, like Angela mentioned, to work together. And I'm sure there's a lot of consulting agencies that do this stuff all the time. I don't want to say we were winging it, but at the time, the consulting company we created had not dealt with these problems. But now we have, and we actually applied some of the knowledge from what we learned into our own operational standards. We still have the brand. It's now called Syndicate Consultants.
And I still have 2 consulting clients.
The website's outdated a bit, but there is still an interest in there and a potential that at a future iteration, we may not be as involved with the day-to-day operations of this location. We'll be out in the field helping some of those clients again. I just don't know, but that's part of this whole process. And it's what a liberal arts education teaches you is, who are you going to be today? It may not be the same person you are tomorrow, but that evolution and that ability to evolve, that is what getting through the pandemic and growing through it, and I don't like the word pivot, but I just said it, pivoting endlessly does to you. It either breaks you or it makes you very, very resilient. And the endurance and the capacity to just endure and persevere almost to an unhealthy level. But that's what we've all gotten through, all of us, everyone on the planet. And we're here for a reason. Yeah. And we feel like 2024 is the chance to just hit the ground running and fly. I mean,
Got to try something.
Yeah, got to keep trying.
Just keep trying.
So tell me how the idea for this place, the vision for this place started. What was your initial, okay, you have an interest in a wine shop, Beaverton has an interest in a wine shop. What was the initial, what did it look like in your head?
There were some wine bars we went to up and down the coast. Some elements that really stood out. The aesthetics of the geometric pattern of a bottle shop, or some of the organic lines and curves of countertop slabs. The use of wood, for example, at all the wineries. Some tasting rooms literally had a slab of wood on top of 2 barrels, and I thought, that is so cool. Didn't know anything, so I learned about slabs, and I learned where to source them from. And so we started talking, and I said, well, when we build this, I'd really like to have slabs for tables. And back in our private room, we've got one of the old slabs that I turned into 2 tables. We've got a slab over here that was part of a 16-foot section that sat on top of 3 barrels. That was originally the seating in the front window. The other counterpart slab, or bookend pieces, so they're mirror image, was cut in half, and it's currently that bookshelf up there along the top. Because I mentioned one thing we would talk about is that we don't like to waste anything. There are sconces in here from a second location that we operated for about 1.5 years in Newburgh. Newburgh doesn't need another wine bar, but I'll tell you, but Stumptown Taps is doing amazing. Our good friend Graham Brown is running that. He is packed out every night. We couldn't be happier for his success. I love the fact that he found something that Newburgh wanted, and the community he's building there in his own way at Stumptown, I feel it mirrors the energy we have here at Syndicate for the wine crowd. And it's just beautiful when you see that happen. It's pure and it's limitless, right? So I don't like wasting things. I like to reuse things. Over your head, there's a projector and there's a screen. Those sat in my garage for many years. They were from the previous training room that I had when I had a tech company in downtown Portland. And I built this elaborate training room that got used all of twice, but this has a new purpose. Part of what's happening this summer is that we're now going to be a site that will be holding wine classes taught through PCC. And a longtime educator is going to be holding some events here. But wait, there's more.
There's more.
One of her colleagues is diplomaed in the WSET, and so that means he can teach WSET classes. I'm level 3, he's level 4. He's got his diploma. So the Wine and Spirit Education Trust is an organization out of London. It teaches a didactic and experiential approach to analyzing wine and learning about wine, so that without knowing the label, without knowing the varietal, without knowing the vintage, I can tell you what's going on in that wine. I can tell you approximately if it's youthful, if it's mature, if it's past, if there's flaws in it. I could probably pick out some of the varietals. I can tell you maybe how it was made. Maybe not the strain of yeast, but I can tell you if it was stainless steel, neutral oak, acacia, new oak. I can tell you where in the world it came from, based on the aromas, the terroir that come through in it, if it's got Brettanomyces, all kinds of things that you just learn over the years of doing this. It's not like in those movies where someone's like, oh yes, this is a 1988 Chateau Latour from, no, not like that. It's literally just like being able to apply, use your senses to provide a quantitative analysis for what's in that glass.
But now,
Well, this educator wants to hold WSET classes here at Syndicate starting on my birthday in September. He didn't know it's my birthday, but it's a pretty good present. I've always wanted Syndicate to serve as a place of education and learning. And what's really cool is, for the first time, I don't have to be the one doing all the classes and teaching it. So I am more than happy to open our doors to these industry colleagues who feel that this would be a good fit for their students. And it's just incredible. So yeah, every element you see in here was either sourced by us or hand-built by us. I do all the woodworking. I like to create functional art, down to the chandeliers over your head. The wall art, which serves as sound panels. We do some art installations now and then, so breaking bottles and flowing epoxy over them, or taking macro photography of wine corks. Although one guest asked me, why do I have pictures of cigarette butts on the wall? I said, they're not cigarette butts. It's not busy work, but it illustrates the fact that all of us here have our creative elements about us, and we don't all show it physically. Some of us do it with a laptop, but we each have creative energies to pour into this, and what you're sitting in and what you're seeing here is a result of the puzzle pieces of our creativity coming together.
and like we said, we don't throw anything out. So the previous tenant of this space left a disco ball behind. So yeah, we kept the disco ball.
It's very popular.
Because who doesn't need a disco ball? Everyone needs a disco ball in their life.
Yeah, if you were to go back to our earliest photographs, the front space here, which at one time was a Meyer and Frank catalog pickup location,
Yeah.
is well known by one of our cooks. Said, "Oh yes, I used to stop in and get my mail orders here." In a future iteration, it would become a Zumba studio and smoothie shop. And so they'd be doing their Zumba.
And we would be across the
And the
street.
disco ball would be going, and I didn't know what was going on inside it. But then when we finally got the keys and we're tearing apart, it's like the old wood paneling, out popped the CD. and it said dance mix.
I don't know.
And I knew I'd struck gold with that. So we like to create spaces,
Yeah.
but ultimately it's the people and their energy
Yeah.
that fill it and make it whole.
Yeah, we do use that disco ball
Yeah,
from time to time.
it does get used. Yeah.
If you have one, you're going to use it.
I don't think that there's any other way.
There is one other disco ball in here. It's a miniature Christmas ornament that the shop down the street had, and I had to get one. And when they heard the story of the disco ball, they gave it to me. Like, you just take it. No, but this touches on a point that I say this somewhat in jest, but also quite seriously to guess. The only thing that we're serious about is the wine,
Yeah.
and everything else is negotiable. I want this to be a place where you can come as you are, just sit down and enjoy, and if you just want to have the glass and nothing else, fine. If you want to talk about the wine, if you want to learn about it, we can go up from there.
Yeah.
But it's meeting the guest where they're at, and really that's how we define having open doors. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the wine then. Tell me about creating a wine list, both shop and bar side. You mentioned off camera you had a strategy for that. So tell me about the strategy for that, and tell me how it has grown and evolved.
So back when we were doing a lot of consulting, we were noting just how many of the wineries seem to have a similar, if not the same, list. 4 or 5 Pinot Noirs, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, maybe a Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, well, and if it was fancy, they'd have a sparkling, or if maybe there was a red from Columbia Valley. Wow, that's not here. And what you're seeing nowadays is a lot of the tasting rooms have caught on to the fact that they need something other than Pinot and Chardonnay. Oregon really became known for its fabulous world-class wines, predominantly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But now to be relevant in this day and age, I mean, they all have similar wines, so that's why this one's doing bingo, this one's doing trivia, this one's doing paint and sip nights. There's got to be something more to that. And I mentioned, I think previously, we're not a winery, but I feel we have the best of all worlds. We have our private label wines. With a flip of a switch, I can talk to a winemaker and I can get a Red Mountain blend. I can talk with them about their ideas for a Ribbon Ridge Pinot Noir. Now, it comes down to availability of grapes, getting into the contracts. Maybe they have a barrel they've been sitting on they don't know what to do with. Wineries are much more regimented in terms of what they produce year in and year out because their club members are expecting a certain set of wines that seasonally change. You get your white wines in the spring, you might have a rosé. There might be a sparkling wine they roll out every 3 years, like a Cremant style, because it just takes that long to bottle age. But see, for us, I don't want to say we're a clearinghouse, but we're a nexus of all the wineries, big and small, far and wide, near and far, you know. And we have access now in the Pacific Northwest to tap into a lot of these smaller winemakers or ones that have an oddball varietal or a particular program that is not popular where they're at in central Washington, but down here people go nuts for it.
Yep.
Our 2016 Red Mountain blend, I can't keep it in the shop. I sell it by the case. And we're working with a winemaker in Washington on it, and he had some barrels, yes, some old barrels, blended it together, sent down 6 bottles to me with painter's tape, 1 through 6, and he said, I'm not going to tell you anything, just taste through them, tell me what you think. I settled on a particular one, and that's what we have now as the Red Mountain blend. I think that where we're at, we have that wonderful opportunity. Why wouldn't we try this? So I've already been speaking with that one winemaker about a different blend. But the shop itself, I mean, that's a dozen labels that we have with a Syndicate name on it. But the shop itself is over 400 wines. How do you curate a selection of wines that are that distinct or that, unique? I don't want wines that you can find in any grocery store or retail outlet. There's a classification of these wines that are typically reserved for higher-end bottle shops, restaurant, known as on-premise labels. In some cases, they're custom blends. In some cases, they're custom releases that are found at the winery only, sometimes only released to their club members, but they're not in general distribution. So, and it's not really about just wanting to have something you can't find anywhere else. It's being intentional. I want higher quality wines Because you can roll into any restaurant and your chances of getting something that you find at retail are actually quite high. There is a profit motive behind this. Most restaurants derive most of their profit through the sale of alcohol, not food. Food might be a break even. We have a very diversified model here, and I'm proud to say we are quite profitable with the food we sell. So that allows us to come down in price on our wines. I'm not pricing my wines like most restaurants do.
Talk about price point tolerance.
Price point tolerance.
What is your community willing to pay? And if you're out of scope of price point tolerance, people aren't going to show up because they can't afford it. So we think of what would the average bell curve price point be for people to come back. We want the second visit, or we want the second drink. So if you price your flight $50 to $75 for a flight, are you going to see them once a year? Are you going to see them around the holidays when they got a holiday bonus? Or do you want regular customers because they can afford to come in more often? And so that's kind of where we're at, is we want to make sure we have representation of a variety of wines from around the world, but we also want to have a variety of price points.
Part of the selection process also was that, so we to establish it first, we didn't want to just be another Pinot and Chardonnay house. So I made a commitment that I would have no more than, at the beginning, it would be no more than a third of our inventory would be that. In the bottle shop, there's a giant big red wall for red wines. I built that. My contractors helped secure it to the wall so it wouldn't fall over in an earthquake, but that was done in my garage and hauled down here in a U-Haul. Dug fir slabs. I mean, it's great, it works. But it was our entire inventory of 108 labels at the time fit on that wall, reds and whites and sparkling. Then the shop started increasing because of the pandemic, and we couldn't seat people indoors. We decided, since we don't like to waste anything, we have this indoor space, let's turn it into a bottle shop. And that coincided as that grew with the opportunity to expand into this back half of the building. So then you start realizing, well, I've got more space. Through the WSET program, I learned about certain varietals, places in the world where wines aren't necessarily rare, but the ability for those wines and the prevalence of those wines to be found in the Northwest, let alone imported into Oregon, were quite rare. So one of the instructors said, if you find this wine, buy it on the spot, do not hesitate. So I immediately thought, well, gosh, I'm going to build out a bottle shop with those wines. And sure enough, you know, a Hunter Valley Semillon, or as they say in Australia, a Semillon, what is it? They have to pick it super early. It is more acidic than battery acid. It is as dry and sour as a Semillon can get, but they have to do that because that hot, humid climate, the grapes will rot on the vine if they're picked any later. Some people like wines like that.
You like what you like.
I found one that was actually palatable. So here's the other thing. I won't bring in a wine that I can't drink or that I can't appreciate. I will be honest, I did not like Chardonnay. I didn't care for it until about a year ago.
She found some.
I had a fantastic industry tasting out at Ponzi, and they had this brand new Laurelwood Chardonnay they just released, mostly neutral oaked, and for some reason it was my aha moment. The big plate of salmon in front of me might have had something to do with it too. That was a great lunch, I'll never forget. But it made me, I had that connection, and one of my dear reps that helped me fill out this space, he lives about a mile from our house. So while the shop was being built, he would bring over wines and we would sit in our living room and sample through box after box after box.
To fill the bottle.
Because I told him I wanted to create something you cannot find anywhere else. The biggest thing of all was the demographic telling me, please no more Pinot, please no more Chardonnay. We want big reds, we want, and not California reds either, we want Walla Walla. There's a connection with the Bledsoe family here in Beaverton. And so a lot of folks would come in and say, I know Drew Bledsoe, you know, the former NFL star who now owns Doubleback Winery. I thought, okay. And then one day we got invited to go out there. And I got a chance to talk to Drew, and Josh McDaniels, his winemaker. Most humble, nicest people in the world. The dude towers over me. He's this huge, huge guy. And he's just so soft-spoken about his passion for winemaking. But then he pulled me aside and he said, I have a question for you. I'm wanting to find out what's going on in the Portland area. Do people like heavily oaked wines? I said, no. My demographic wants neutral oaked. They want the flavors of the fruit to speak for themselves. And the exchange ended with him saying, that's what our research is showing too. And what do you know, in their current releases, they've pulled way back on the oak.
Yeah.
And our guests love them even more. So it's little nuggets like that just, it's like trying to deflect an asteroid from hitting the Earth. You got to get to it 10 years in advance and just tap it so it avoids it. But little course corrections, I told you, I'm a day off. The mileage may vary with what I say. But little course corrections for conversations or things you learn, or rare opportunities to taste a Chardonnay on the right day in late fall 2023, and it just clicks off this whole new process, and you realize that now you've fallen in love with old world Bourgogne Blanc. That's an expensive habit, by the way. So the bottle shop is a reflection of what our consumers have been asking for, what my training taught me to look for, where my own palate has led me, and then the reps do a lot of the legwork. I tell them what I'm looking for, and I absolutely never want to find one of the wines I've picked at a plaid pantry.
Oh yeah, that's a bad one.
That's a chapter I'll write about at a future date.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
Because what you find out is that there's a lot of players in the distribution market, and some of them have private accounts, and they kind of stock wines wherever they want to, and
Yeah.
you can't, the reps don't know that. Okay, lesson learned.
But we do
So
not
now,
want
so now my checklist is it at plaid?
I mean, props to Plaid Pantry for having a wine that.
Oh, it's an exceptional New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Are you kidding me? I'd picked it out for my club.
We're like, nope, not anymore.
And then that night I'm like, okay, I'm going to run down to the shop to get some peanut M&Ms. And I came back with a bottle of that too, saying, look what I found.
He sends the receipt to the distributor. This is not getting in our shop anymore.
Anyway,
That gets bold.
no one's perfect, and it's a constant learning process, but the bottle shop up front, there's definitely some trial and error in there. Mm-hmm. There's some wines that I thought for sure would be popular, and they didn't move. So part of the strategy is through the wine club now, because every month I select 6 different wines for our club members to choose from. As part of their club membership, they get 2 bottles. You can be in a club where you get 2 white wines, 2 red wines, 1 of each. And in the 1 of each, you can go West Coast, international, or you don't care. So we get like 5 levels of club. And I know by the end of the month what moved. And that's what we reorder.
And that's what gets on the wall.
So the club of 170 accounts, which when you include their plus ones and guests is about 400 consumers that we see on a monthly average, they serve as the biggest, not focus group, but the biggest voice, because they vote with their dollars over what they want to see in the shop. And years ago, a business coach from the tech company I had said, when you put the product in front of the consumer, when you answer the consumer's request, business will follow. Mm-hmm. If I carry what people want, they'll buy it. It's that simple. And the fact that our inventory is so heavily weighted in varietals and styles of wine from around the world that aren't just Pinot and Chardonnay, I don't want to be giving away the keys to the kingdom or the secrets, but this is what we need for a bottle shop and a wine bar to work in Beaverton.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Angela, you brought up some of sort of the events that have happened, both planned and perhaps unplanned here. Tell me a little bit about sort of the building process of that and what happens next. What have you not done here that you want to do?
That's an interesting. So we have a variety of events. Our biggest one is our annual festival. It's called Block Party, and it's basically we shut down the entire parking lot, and we have vendors around the perimeter of the parking lot and then some in the middle representing different wine brands. People pay for admission, and you get 10 tasting coupons. So that was 2 weeks ago, and it is a program that we spend about a year planning, David and I together, all the advertising, all of it, all the compliance, just everything. So it is a huge event, about 350 people attend. Everything from we have music outside to food outside, food inside. Our entire entire company, everyone's working that day. It is big. 3 times a year, we close the bar down, remove half the tables, pull the blinds, turn the disco ball on, turn the music on, and we have what's called theme parties here. So in July, we have what's called our 90s themed Summer Bash. Our club members dress up. I have a photo booth against this wall, and everybody gets very, very corny and sings out loud, top of their lungs to anything. Last year we did it for 80s theme. They said they wanted 90s theme this year. And it gets crazy, it's fun. And they have a buffet dinner and then open their own tabs and just, it becomes random. Sometimes when David and I are the ones that are serving, because other people are off, we turn on music and then people are like, oh my gosh, they're seriously singing out loud. And I'm like, yes, why not? I mean, if it's a song we know the lyrics to. And we have a few that I'm like, I can hear like, it's like Name That Tune style, like 3 notes in and he's gonna start dancing. I'm like, oh, here it goes again. But we keep it kind of random around here. We do a second chance prom on New Year's Eve, which has happened around this. We did it 3 years ago and then last year, and this will be the 3rd one. But it was people were saying that they don't want to go to Portland for New Year's Eve, but also people were saying that they don't want to stay out till midnight. So we created a second chance prom, basic concept the same as Summer Bash, buffet dinner, but we recognize East Coast. Then once they close down here, another restaurant in the neighborhood recognizes Central, and another restaurant recognizes Mountain, and another restaurant recognizes Pacific. So you basically have 4 New Year's Eve, and we're pub crawling. And it's turned into such an amazing following that I even had people this weekend saying, when do your New Year's Eve tickets go on sale? I want to grab them before it's sold out. Because it does sell out. Our fire code's for a certain amount, and we sell out like 20 people under because of just people moving about. But it's become a thing now. And again, the 2 of us are planning these big, huge parties all the time.
Last fall, we had a Marvel superhero themed Halloween. And then 2 folks show up dressed as Ernie and Bert. Like, well,
yeah,
not exactly, but that's close enough.
I was like, okay, all right, we'll be random. I mean, we've known each other for 35 years, so the randomness comes through and the fun, as David said, the only thing we take seriously is the wine. Yeah. But we like to have fun around here. My sister comes to town like every 2 years because she lives pretty far away, but she was here for our New Year's Eve party, and she's like, oh, so now I understand. You're going around with an iPad and you're choosing music and you're looking around the room to see how many people will start either head bobbing or singing. And you will try to pick a music to get the whole room going. And she's like, give me the iPad. And so she starts playing DJ. And I was like, what? And then she looks at me, she goes, oh, you plan parties for a living. That's what you do now. Okay, if you want to simplify what we do, we plan parties for a living. But it's a little more complex than that.
A little bit.
But we have our club events. Our club events are every month, and there's 3 of them. We have big bingo and trivia nights. I'm now starting to do alumni association nights. Western Oregon's going to have one here in August. There's times where an organization will book out this entire restaurant for a party, so I work with them on planning their entire menu. If they want the add-ons of live music, or if they want on a photo booth, they pick out their wines with David and their food with our kitchen team. But that's 1 or 2 of those every month, and then it just starts rolling. I'm like, okay. And there's some community events we end up going to because we're very involved in the chamber. We're their wine sponsor for their annual gala in May. So all the wines that are at that gala are Syndicate wines being poured. And that's a gala for 300 to 400 people.
Oh, yeah, it was fully packed this year. Yeah.
At that gala, they give out awards for the best of Beaverton. And this year, surprisingly, we're still in shock. We got Small Business Partner of the Year. So we were like, wow. And I have a degree in speech communications, and I'm like, you're taking the speech.
The speech is online.
The speech is there. So I'm like, it was a little bit of shock.
Dad jokes and all.
We were up against some really good Beaverton companies. But so we sponsor, we're one of the sponsors for the Chehalem Gala that's in October. We supply wines for that. He works directly with the Chehalem Cultural Center. Some great relationships that we have around. But we try to be involved in the community, not only by creating things here, We have an ugly sweater party every December.
Yeah, that's true.
You never know what's happening. There's always something. So tonight, we're not usually open on Mondays, but it's been so hot and it's been kind of a weird thing. So David decided, and I'm just writing notes, he decided, he's like, we're gonna be open on Monday and I'm gonna just pull some wines off the wall and make a flight out of it. And it's just gonna be a randomness Monday. If you wanna come down to our randomness, and he picked out wines that are all around the Syndicate theme, and it's just hilarious. It's just hilarious.
Yeah.
We just try to have fun.
You gotta always try something new.
Yeah.
But the consistency of being here is what I think people keep coming back for.
Yeah.
But it's true to form, the parties are exemplification that
We're not
if we're not laughing, we're not doing it right.
We're singing out loud. I mean,
the one thing we haven't done here is a karaoke night.
Yeah.
And I will get behind a mic.
Yeah, he will.
And
What's your song?
so I warm up with Tom Petty tracks. I'll ease into some Boyz II Men. My show capper is Frank Sinatra, My Way.
Oh.
So by that point,
But he will sing Backstreet
someone will
Boys.
throw me a Blink 182,
Oasis.
Oasis, and there is occasionally Backstreet Boys or NSYNC that hits. So, but by
That
that
we were
time,
not.
there is no humility left. It is
none.
all just self-depravity, and
But it's fun.
everyone's warned if they're still there what they're in store for.
This weekend, that's what we decided to do. We're just like playing the music, and then all of a sudden, I hear in the background, I go, I'm just gonna stop. I'm gonna watch this play out. And he just starts singing.
Thought about like open mic night, dramatic poetry readings, but then we'd have to turn the lighting way down low. Everyone was
moody.
black and kind of morose, but I don't know if that would be really conducive for what we're trying to create here. But that was one thing that the pandemic did push on us:
It's crazy.
adapt or die. I mean, it was do or die moment, really.
Yeah.
And then we realized it could be fun. It doesn't have to be all like doom and gloom. As a small company, we are nimble in that way.
Mm-hmm.
We are very creative, and we like a challenge of something different and new. But yeah, it's the people that make this what it is. Yeah.
So what comes next for the two of you, personally or professionally? What are you
I'm thinking lunch maybe, but so that's a great question. What comes
We were
next?
talking about that this morning. We were talking about like we set goals at the end of the year for the next year, and we talk about strategies, and we talk about big picture, and we talk about the small. And we were just talking about goals today of, how are we doing on our 2024 goals, and where are we at? We're at the beginning of July. What have we accomplished, and where do we want to go? We don't want another location. We have figured that out. We're like, nope, I want to just really focus on this. I feel like where we're going right now, it has to do with consistency. It has to do with balance. It has to do with travel, because we've been here almost every day for 5 years. It has to do with maybe delegating some of our responsibilities to other people. I mean, we've done a very good job. He doesn't have to be the only teacher anymore. But it's like, I think we just want to focus on here, but become better and more efficient. And people sitting in the chairs.
It's really the programming that is the next evolution.
Yeah.
Personal level, the balance that we've been able to achieve work-life is
Yes, huge.
way better than it was even a year ago. Like actually having days off, actually getting yard work done. That's how I know I'm getting old, because I'm starting to get boring, and that stuff interests me. I don't know. It's uncharted territory. We're now just on the cusp of being empty nesters. My son just graduated high school. He's off to college in the fall. He's at summer camp right now.
So we really are empty nesters.
Yeah.
We have three sons.
A lot of time on our hands.
But they're all grown. But we have family that still lives in McMinnville. All of my family lives in McMinnville. So
One of my reps threatened to send us on a nearly all expenses paid trip to Italy.
I hate those threats.
I don't know what to do with these threats. No, the concept was, you guys figure out airfare, we'll handle the rest.
Yeah. so
Because
that's what's
we
next.
buy a lot of wine. When I have a club event, I'll pick up 10 cases of a particular label, and I still need 5 other labels. So it's a pallet of wine that we go through
Just get about 25 cases a week.
for just that monthly churn, and that doesn't even touch the bottle shop.
No.
So if you land a certain brand that really does well, I mean, Rep gets me good wine. I make Rep's job easy. I sell lots of wine. My guests keep drinking wine. My guests like me more. They keep buying more of that wine. Rinse, repeat. I don't want to dumb it down to that, but it is an equation to some degree. And then occasionally, said wine brand goes, "Wow, thank you so much. We'd love to have you visit us." And so that's what we're toying with, the idea of maybe going over there in the spring. But this whole thought of like planning travel when you've come out of a multi-year pandemic, where I hope the country's open for travel by then. I don't know what's going to happen next, but we're at a point of just saying we just got to commit. We just got to do it and deal with what happens. So
You can't plan for everything.
yeah.
But you can plan for, because we've built this business from the ground up, literally sealing this floor together. But it will be good for us to, as part of the balance of this year, is to get out and travel more, or get down to see my family in McMinnville, or because my mom says a lot. She's like, "You should open a wine bar in McMinnville," and I go, "Mom, you sent me into graduate school. I went to graduate school. I understand saturated market. You have a saturated market in McMinnville. You have more wine bars and tasting rooms than gas stations and coffee shops combined. You don't need me down there. I wouldn't be successful down there because it's saturated." She's like, "But then we would see you more." And I go, "It's still saturated market. I look at business success, and that's not where we want to be. We want to be here."
I'm reminded years and years ago from one of the colleagues I used to work with. He was deeply entrenched in sustainability, and I brought him in to actually help create my tech company sustainability program. And it was around not only waste reduction, but energy monitoring, because we utilized so much electricity, the average of like 20 homes, with just running three server racks for 5,000 websites. I mean, it was a lot of business, a lot of juice running through those boxes. And so we started figuring out ways that we cut down on our waste. We would measure how much garbage we would use. And he had this philosophy that sustainability isn't about endless growth. It's about reaching a manageable plateau that is self-sustaining. And where you go from there, then you can maybe redefine it. It's a constant iterative process where you're constantly working. There's never a day off. There's never a moment where like, okay, end goal. Okay, well now what? And having another colleague that I recently met up with here at the bar, who knows about the demands of energy consumption in the Northwest. I mean, really deep conversations that I could not have had I not gone through that training way back when. But applying it to this business, I mean, we have such little waste, almost non-existent food waste. We rarely have anything get to its expiration date before it's used. Mm-hmm. The food waste is from guests not finishing the food on their plates.
That's it.
I mean, most restaurants in our community are mandated to have on-site composting because of the amount of food waste. We don't even come close to that. So there's things that we've taken from our previous walks in life, but reaching that point of sustainability and self-sustaining business as a whole is about balance. So I would say balance is what our future goal is.
Yeah.
A day off is nice too now and then, I guess. But
Well, that's fantastic. That's all the questions that I have for you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have, or anything we didn't cover today that you wanted to cover?
You haven't asked us when we'd like to hold an alumni night for Linfield.
Well, that's above my pay grade, but I think that's a great idea.
We'd love to have one here.
If we got Western,
Yeah, the competition's on now.
yeah, right? I mean, Western's further away than Linfield.
If there's ever any guest speaking opportunities down there
Yeah.
for either of our professions, our focuses,
Yeah.
count me in. Would love to give back to the university that helped get me here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you both so much for sharing your story.
Pleasure's all ours. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you both so much. Let you off the hook. Go Wildcats.